Great, thanks. Well, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for coming. Well, you'll see the trials and tribulations will come over. It's mostly going to be more about documenting the languages and what's involved in the process, and why these languages are dying. This first photo is sort of representative of what's happening in these areas where I work. Sekou Modé died I think the second year that we were there, and that's what's happening to a lot of these speakers. They're no longer with us, and that's why there's a particular urgency about the task. That is, we got to do it right away, or it just isn't going to happen. Okay, thank you to all my sponsors and so on and so forth. The people who are financing the current project are people in London, the Hans Rausing Endangered Languages, and the NSF. At the end, particularly for those of you who are younger, you might want to think about applying for some of these grants, because right now there's a lot of money around for this kind of work, and they're pretty generous, particularly for younger people, and so I would encourage you all to apply. Okay. I'm going to say a little bit about language shift, and that language death is what I'm basically talking about today. The languages I'm talking about are all nearly disappeared and probably will disappear. There's not too much we can do about them. So if we start off with the assumption that all languages are equal in prestige and use, you can have this one particular situation where everyone could be multilingual or everyone could be monolingual. So you have a set of languages. It can be the case that everyone controls all those languages, or everyone controls just one of those languages, and that you can have completely multilingual. These are sort of logical possibilities. It never really happens. But what usually happens is something like diglossia or triglossia or quadriglossia or whatever, multiglossia, on up the line, where you have the languages functionally distributed. In other words, you have one language used, say, in the home, another one used for education, another one for religion, something like that. And that is what you see in a lot of Africa. Africa is a highly multilingual continent, but I don't think it's as multilingual as people have been led to believe. In places I work, rarely do people speak more than one language. Besides this, when you have the languages functionally distributed like this, you can have a situation where it's stable, where it persists in that way. That is a place like Switzerland, where you have a low and a high variety. The low variety, the dialect is used, in various domains like poetry and chatting with someone, or Sweden, Holland. All these European countries have fairly stable diglossia. Unstable diglossia, though, is a situation that we're going to talk about today. That is where things are undergoing change, where young people don't use one of the languages in as many domains and as many environments as do their parents. So that when you have a situation where the functions, the domains are more and more reduced, you have the language disappearing because it's simply not used anymore. And that's what's happened in the areas we're going to talk about today. So that's when you get language shift and language death. Language death is kind of a scary term, but it's not the people dying. I mean, eventually we all die, but it's not the case that the speakers of the language die. They just shift to another language. They don't use the language anymore. So that's what language death is. Okay. Next point I want to make is that language is central to Africans' identity, but you shouldn't see the two as being necessarily totally intertwined. Sometimes you can speak a language and not share in that identity. You speak it purely for utilitarian purpose, and that's also the case in the United States as well. Nelson Mandela gave a speech I was at the University of Witwatersrand, as Jeffrey said, for about 3 or 4 years. And one thing he said really struck me because South Africa is a really multilingual place. He says if you speak in their own language, you speak. If you speak in a language they understand, you speak to their head. That is, the people can understand what you're talking about. But then when you speak in their own language, you speak to their heart. And it's really true what he says in South Africa.